Okay, so welcome everybody to this special webcast from Travel Weekly. Obviously, we're going through some very difficult times in the industry, so we've brought together three wise heads from the sector who have been there and seen it and done it, but I suspect I've never seen anything quite like what's going on at the minute. So we've brought them together to talk about the challenges, talk about what's going to happen in the next few months in the future, to get their ideas on how the industry can survive what is clearly a very difficult period. So we're delighted to have Jeanette Linfoot on the call. We've got Waggott on the call, and we've got Photi, people who will be very well known to you in the industry, I'm sure. So can we just kick off, maybe go to Jeanette first. Just tell us a little bit about how this crisis has affected you and your daily work, how you're managing to carry on working, the kind of things you're doing at the minute.
Yeah, sure. So I've got three businesses now. So I do a lot of advisory work with private equity and with corporate clients, a lot in mergers and acquisitions. So I was working on three travel acquisitions before this kicked off, which now understandably are on hold. So with that area, I'm just really keeping in touch with my clients, and we've put a watching brief, and we'll see what happens when we come out the other side. So that's one aspect. I also do a lot of business mentoring, and obviously the need for that now is even higher than normal. So I've started doing free sessions for people that need it, which is great. And I also have a property investment business, which is a totally different sector to travel, but also not without its challenges. So lots going on.
Yeah. Will, apart from learning to use Zoom, I know
I have lots going on.
Okay, you're getting there. What's been keeping
you? We just set up this consultancy company between me, Seamus Connell, and Steve Endicott called Rebound Consultancy, which is around how businesses survive today to rebound when travel is allowed again. So we are all kind of semi-retired. None of us have got full-time jobs at the moment, all looking for something to do, and it seemed a good opportunity to give something back to the industry and do something useful. Yeah.
And Chris, your knowledge of regulation and the industry is not surpassed by anybody, I don't think, really. So you must be in very, very high demand. How are you coping with working from home?
Well, I'm having fine working from home. At least I can work from home effectively. I'm just really trying to serve our client base, firefighting, advising travel businesses the best way to approach some of the unique situations they're facing. A lot of the travel industry, to put it bluntly, are fighting for their lives. And, I'm trying to help my clients as best I can through very turbulent waters.
Yeah. So let's go into some of those challenges. I mean, clearly the word unprecedented has been used a lot to describe this. We're going to need a new word after this, I think, because it'll be used to death. Let's assume you all are going to say it's unprecedented, but it does feel like we're almost at an existential crisis here for travel. How long do you think we've got in the industry before it really irreversible damage is done? Maybe start with Chris on that one.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of irreversible damage has already been done, if I'm blunt, and certainly the next few days are going to be extremely telling. There are a number of key issues. I think the most important one at the moment is this whole refund credit note, package travel regulation, obligation to reimburse the consumer. A lot of the other EU member states tweaked the PTR, the PTD legislation over 2.5 weeks ago. Unfortunately, our government has prevaricated. They've been receiving a lot of lobbying from ABTA. I believe even the CA and the Department for Transport are very much in line with thinking this is a desirable thing for the travel industry. But unfortunately, it appears that BEIS has a dilemma. In fact, they probably think it's going to be detrimental to consumers when they need money in these difficult times. But really, there are a lot of travel businesses with their lives hanging by a thread. And it's been exacerbated by the airline position. The airline has a much stronger lobby. They have the support of 38 MPs. And it does appear that they've got the support of the European Commission. The European Commission has warned phase that they'd be breaking the law if they tweaked the PTRs. It didn't stop the other states, so that's another dilemma. The European Commission has issued clarification guidance on Regulation 261 from airlines. And if I was a betting man, the travel industry's position is going to be exacerbated by the fact that airlines are more likely to be able to give vouchers or credit notes than the travel industry is. That's a double whammy. Not only have you got to give the consumer money back under the PTRs, you're going to give them money that you haven't got or never had because you've paid it out, or you have had, but you've paid it out to airlines on their behalf. If that goes against the industry, that will be irreversible damage to so many businesses. The outlook isn't brilliant. There's a lot of businesses that are finding ways to survive. Cash is king. If you have enough cash, despite all of these things, to be here in 6 months' time, you're putting yourself in a pretty good position to survive and probably thrive later on. Yeah. It's a long time to survive with income.
I just came off a call literally before we started with a significant OTA who just cannot believe the stance the airlines are taking, where they're offering credit notes, they're not offering the full cash refund, and just believes that trust in the travel industry is being absolutely decimated, undermined. And that in itself will cause long-term problems. I mean, ultimately, a customer who doesn't get in their cash can go to the credit card companies and get it back that way, and that's what he believes may happen, and that'll put companies under even more strain. And you'll have the credit card companies also putting more strain on companies. So it's a no-win situation here. It's very
difficult for them, but you've got to remember how powerful the airline lobby is. With the support of IATA, they've issued a COVID-19 updated impact assessment, which is readily available on the IATA website, which shows the damage that's being done to airlines. Unfortunately, the travel industry has been unable to produce such a comprehensive documentation. You've got to appreciate also the government's position. The governments consider airlines to be fundamental to the economy and economic growth. They connect individuals, they connect businesses, they carry cargo. All of these things are considered necessities. Unfortunately, government could take the stance that a travel holiday is a discretional spend and isn't important as these other things. Bays is in a dilemma, and as much as I hate to say it, it doesn't look as though it's going for the travel industry at the moment. Yeah, I know down the years we've spoken a lot about crises in travel, Chris, and you've written a lot of pieces for us, and you quite often have used the word Armageddon in the past to describe situations, and it's got close but never quite got there. Do you suspect that Armageddon's the right kind of word to use today? It is. You use the word existential. That's human existence, I suppose, meaning of life. It's not quite got to that area as far as the travel industry is concerned, but it is a critical period of time. I have not experienced anything like this in my 40 years of advising the industry. Yeah. Will, you've, as you said, you're offering your advice and expertise and experience in the travel sector. Given what Chris has said, what are you able to tell these companies that are coming to you absolutely desperate?
Well, listen, I agree with everything Chris has said, and I think if the government don't allow travel companies to give vouchers out, and I think you would have to then stop people charging back on credit cards as well, because it's not that simple, because then the money still comes out of the retailer or the tour operator that's providing the trip. All it's going to do is accelerate the demise very, very quickly, because that revenue in advance is a very, very important cash flow for all of these businesses. So they kind of have to do this, otherwise more businesses are going to go bust. I think, the really big businesses like TUI, maybe Jet2, EasyJet, are likely to end up with some sort of government bailout. So it kind of long-term maybe doesn't matter to them whether they refund or not. But all the small and medium-sized companies, that's not going to happen to them, and they will run out of cash incredibly quickly if they have to start giving refunds. I think on top of that, all businesses, small and medium businesses anyway, have to furlough as many staff as they can, offer them the 80% that the government's giving them, cut as many costs as they can, take out rent, computer maintenance, send as many staff home as you can, and maintain cash. And the best way to maintain cash is not give refunds. I think, you know, if you do that and you can end up in 3 to 6 months' time when these things come back with some cash in the bank, you can rebound and start back again. And it's all about how you maintain cash between now and then, because the income of these businesses has to be zero by now.
Yeah.
What cash maintenance, and that's not refunding. The government have to support that, otherwise businesses will go bust. And cutting costs to the bare minimum. You're literally mothballing companies to try and wake them up again in 3 to 6 months' time, and that's the only way they're going to survive.
I mean, you say 3 to 6 months. Is that your outlook? Do you think if it's longer than that, surely no one can survive?
Borders. I mean, even if the rate starts coming down in the UK, I can't see borders being mass open before June, July. I really can't, and that's earliest. So I think you've got to assume in the travel industry the summer's gone. And the earliest you're really going to have a full season is winter.
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, the world will have changed massively. You're going to, you know, they are going to have lost trust because they're going to have had vouchers. Now, I think the idea of giving vouchers that last a year, and if you haven't used them, you can get your cash then, I think that's sensible. So people get some value out of their vouchers and people don't profiteer from them. But, you know, some of the trusts will have gone, and people are going to have to look at terms and conditions to give people the comfort of booking in advance that they get their money back if these kind of things go wrong for them. I think working from home, for instance, that will change completely. I can see people getting rid of half their office space and saying, this has worked for 6 months. Why do we need all this office space? You know, companies like Amazon and home delivery services, which are booming during this, that's here to stay. So the world will have changed at the end of this.
Agreed.
Yes, Jeanette. Sorry, I'll bring you in again, Chris, in a minute. Just get Jeanette's thoughts on, you know, on the prospects. It's obviously not good, very bleak. I mean, there'll be companies out there with some forward bookings for post June, but they'll be on low deposit, I guess, guarantees, and there's no guarantee the customer will continue with those. They may even forfeit the deposit and go for, if there are any holidays in summer, go for a really cheap deal as operators try and get something away. So even if things do come back at the earliest opportunity in June, it's still very difficult to see what this summer will bring.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's almost the worst time of year, isn't it, for this to happen? Because, you know, it's a point when everyone's due to pay their balances for the summer holidays. And as we all know, you know, having been in the industry for more years than we care to remember, you know, travel businesses really only make money during a very limited part of the season. And that, as Will rightly says, that has gone. Really, you have to assume there is no summer. And then winter is, you know, is a significantly smaller market. So I think the time frame is very difficult to predict. I think, you know, it's a case of plan for the worst and hope for the best, I would say, for all businesses, and do everything that you can to protect your cash. And I think the other thing for us to remember that's a bit different to previous crises is that this really is truly global. You know, and if we think about the impact of the industry, travel and tourism accounts for over 10% of global GDP. You know, 330 million people work in the industry globally. And if you look at any of the stats in the World Travel and Tourism Council, they're predicting 75 million jobs at risk. You know, this is absolutely huge. And you know, the word unprecedented, it absolutely is. So it is very, very tough. And I think it's all about survival in the short term, so that then when we come through the other side, obviously the industry will look very, very different. But actually then it's a time to rebound. But the key is survival during this really, really difficult time.
Yeah. Chris, you were going to chip in early with something, I think, were you?
I was just commenting that I agreed wholeheartedly with everything Will said. That was all.
Yeah. Just maybe clear something up.
And what Jeanette said too.
Maybe clear something up that's been a very big topic, is whether these credit notes or vouchers, whatever you want to call them, I think they've gone from vouchers to the credit notes, whether they are actually backed by ATOL or by ABTA, as has been claimed. There's people out there who think that's not technically the case. The change hasn't been made yet, and agents are very, very unsure about recommending their customers take them. What's your view, Chris?
Refund credit notes as opposed to vouchers are an acceptable method of continuing the consumer protection as far as each booking is concerned. ABTA have made that clear for at least 10 days now and have issued a very clear guidance note. By extension, ATOL bookings are similarly protected by refund credit notes. It is in section 4.2 of the ATT policy document, which shows so you can issue refund credit notes with the acquiescence of the consumer and have their consumer protection continue. ABTA have put a finite time on that of the 31st of July. That's more to do with their bonding scheme than anything else. One assumes that that can be extended, but it can apply to ATOL bookings now. But there's nothing you can do if a consumer is entitled to a refund under the package travel regulations to insist that he takes it. We need a relaxation of the PTR law in order for it to be possible for a travel business to make it mandatory for them to accept a refund credit note. There is a difference between refund credit note and voucher. If you issue a voucher, consumer protection does not transmit as it does to a credit note. So a consumer accepting a voucher would lose their consumer protection rights for their booking. But if they receive a refund credit note, both for an ABTA bonded booking and for an ATOL booking, their consumer protection will continue.
Yeah. So obviously, Will, does cash is king, and cash flows what's going to keep companies going through this period. Is that the only thing that people are trying to sort out at the minute, or are there other big issues that they're facing other than just cash?
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, because you've got to get to the end of this period with some cash in the bank so you can continue trading and get your staff back who you have to send home. I mean, it's tragic the amount of people who are going to lose their jobs and the effect it's having on household incomes. But you know, if businesses don't do that, there'll be no jobs to go back to. So they kind of have to do it. Yeah, I think you've got to start thinking about what happens when the travel ban goes. And, you know, I think businesses will look very different, and you need to start thinking about how you restructure them for a new world with probably less consumer confidence around the whole industry, having given out vouchers than there was before, looking at terms and conditions, looking at the size and shape of your business so that when you do rebound, you've got the right structure in place to take advantage of what will be a bounce back. But it's going to be very different to today, very different. And I think my own view is in that first few months, it's going to be a mess because people are going to be putting capacity on late and trying to sell it in a late market. And it's going to be pretty messy for the first 3 to 6 months as people try and get back to a normal booking cycle.
Yeah. What do you think we'll see long term, you know, changes in the way businesses are operated? Because, I mean, I've heard, you know, since this has happened, travel being called just one big Ponzi scheme because it's about the flow of cash. You operate your business today on bookings you took for holidays that haven't happened yet. Do you think this is going to change, or do we just go back to normal?
I think it's going to be much more difficult to get people to pay a lot of money up front for the holidays. So I think that will change. I think what we're doing now will change things. I think you're going to find a lot more people making bookings over video calls because they've got used to it, because they'll have done it for 6 months. So I think you'll see a massive increase in people chatting to people about their booking on video conferencing. And less people ringing up on the phones and going onto going on the phones. Websites won't go away. Websites will always going to do well. But I think the phone will get replaced by this because people have been doing it for 6 months. You know, I've got a quiz night on Friday on House Party, and everyone is interacting on video. People, that's what they're doing now, and they're very used to it.
Yeah, I mean, the broadband companies are going to do well out of it because everyone's going to need better broadband in their homes to be able to sustain this. But I mean, I have been told for agents out there, Jeanette, it's an opportunity. They are going to have a period where they're not making any sales, but it is an opportunity to actually speak to your customer in maybe ways you haven't done before. If you're a home worker, you may have spoken to them on the phone, but never actually seen them physically. Mm-hmm. So there may be things that companies can do in this period where, you know, they are ready for that bounce back, as Will was saying.
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, I mean, I think during this time, obviously, you know, the cash in the financial position is absolutely critical. But I think how you engage with your customers through this period is also really important because, you know, whilst there's uncertainty, you know, you can never over communicate really, I don't think. And even if you don't have all of the answers right now, I think if you're dealing with your customers in the best way possible through the tough times, that will be remembered. And so in terms of customer loyalty, and those customers that are treated well should stay with you when the bounce back does happen. And I think the role of social media as well is really key. I think businesses that take the opportunity to have really engaging content and good comms, will do well out of it at the back end when it does come back. And I think, as Will says, businesses will have to restructure, they will have to streamline, take costs out of their business. And then if the business has been used to operating in that way, then that will become the base point, if you like, and the new norm. So I think organisation structures will change and ways of working remotely as well. So, whilst as difficult as all of this is, and there's no shying away from that, I think there are things which businesses can focus on now to put them in as good a place as possible coming through the other side. So yeah, I mean, try and look for those positives, as few as they are, but really engage with your customers. That I think is critical.
I guess one of the issues in travel with the furlough route is that you're not working when you're furloughed, but you might want to keep people in the business because they want to do exactly what you're saying. They're not making any sales for the business, but they are keeping those consumer relations going. So it's a tricky one for travel to balance that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think retaining talent is really high on people's priority as well. So whilst you have to make those tough choices as a business owner, at the end of the day, you also want to make sure that you've still got good people that are there when you need them, when things do pick up again. So it's a really, really tricky balance. But if you're someone that has been furloughed or worse, facing a redundancy scenario, whilst you are at home, I would say take that opportunity to keep yourself current, to educate yourself, to broaden your skills as much as possible. There's lots of free online content in all areas really today, and I think that is an advantage. So the more that you can upskill, even if you're not there doing a day-to-day job for the company, I think will stand you in the best position possible going back into a role, or maybe a new business or a role going forward.
Yeah. So Chris, furloughing is one piece of assistance you can get from the government. There's others out there. There's other ways you can get the government to help you through this period. Is it enough for travel, Chris? Are travel companies taking advantage of this? Are they able to, do you think, in time?
Well, I think they're able to, and they're certainly attempting to. I'd just like to underscore one point that Jeanette made, which was absolutely brilliant point. Even though you're a travel worker who's been furloughed, use the 2 months to upskill yourself. Such a vitally important, whether it be upskilling yourself in Excel, touch typing. There's loads of things you can do that will benefit yourself as individuals and also benefit the business that you work for. So that was a brilliant point from Jeanette. Other things that have been made available, obviously the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme is something that many businesses are seeking to look for. And perhaps not as attractive as the Chancellor might have you believe, because banks are still looking at their own requirements to secure their own position. I'm looking at one of the bank's handouts here, and at the bottom it says all property used as security, which may include your home, may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on the loan. So even though the government is securing 80% of the loan, it doesn't come without risks for owner-entrepreneur businesses. I'm pleased to say that today I've seen 2 of my smaller clients actually get terms under this scheme. In both cases, they were required to give personal guarantees, which isn't ideal and is not a factor that can be used for larger entities. But the feedback that I'm getting for the banks, and I have a team devoted to doing this to try and help our clients, is that there's a willingness to support the travel industry, but the willingness is to support those businesses that were viable and were doing well prior to this crisis. Unfortunately, if you had a business that was ailing, zombie-like, not going anywhere, making losses, you aren't going to get any hope from this scheme. But if you had a vibrant, successful business that is going through difficulties because of this crisis, the banks are looking as though they're going to support. The scheme's available for UK companies that have an annual turnover up to 45 million. It's got to be a UK-based company. Travel industry is an industrial sector that complies with this scheme. There's no interest to pay for the initial 12 months, no set-up charges as such. But unfortunately, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and you've got to repay this money back at some stage. And banks are unlikely to be generous with interest rates after that first year period. And also there is a regulatory gap between regulated companies being able to avail themselves of these loans and the reaction from their regulator to them actually structuring this debt. Under the ATOL standard terms, you have to get prior permission from the CAA for any new finance structure and any security. And this is one of the key things that I'm seeking to speak to the joint heads of ATOL tomorrow with regards to their view. For instance, there are many businesses out there that have valuable freehold and long leasehold property, a classic way of securing a position to get yourself some liquidity. But technically, you've got to go cap in hand and ask the CAA. The CAA historically take a long time to reach decisions when requested, involving the external use of city lawyers, redlining agreements, etc., etc. We don't have time for all of that. The CAA needs to make some positive moves in this area and give the industry indications of what is and isn't acceptable, and to make those decisions quickly on a case-by-case basis. But this loan scheme is potentially a lifesaver for so many travel businesses. And after refunds, I think this is the second key thing that all travel businesses should be looking at if they haven't already been doing so.
Will, you were nodding ahead there about the loan scheme, and
Well,
you're talking to people about that as well.
Yeah, time is the key here. You know, businesses are going to be trust in the next couple of weeks, and if it takes weeks or months for these loans to get out, it's going to be too late. You know, I agree with Chris. The CAA need to relax the rules completely, because effectively they're going to put businesses out of business unless we can get these loans through quickly. I equally think that, as Chris said, the loans aren't free. So, you know, if you're losing a lot of money and what you're doing with these loans is financing the losses, you've still got those losses and you're going to have to pay the loan back. So I still think the key is to get the cost base of your business as low as you possibly can and use as little of those loans as you possibly can. But I'd take the loan, I'd just try not to use it.
Yeah, I think the Chancellor, when he announced all this help, he used the word good businesses. We want to help good businesses. And that's kind of what Chris was saying. If you were trading well.
Well, the problem is any marginal businesses or businesses, you know, making a decent lifestyle for the owner manager, you know, it's making 50,000 a year and he's making a salary and he's got, you know, 40, 50 employees making a salary. They're not going to lend the money because it's not making enough profit. So there's many small and medium-sized businesses that are not going to be profitable enough to get this loan in the first place. Or businesses that don't have assets, or people who aren't willing to put their house up for it. So it's still very difficult to get the loan for many businesses.
Yeah, Jeanette, a lot of people in travel will be self-employed, and obviously there was help announced for self-employed people as well. Is that you think something that travel can avail itself of?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's, you know, it's similar to all of the other support that's available from government. You should absolutely take advantage of that as quickly as possible. You know, and again, you know, if you're self-employed and you're at home, you know, you very quickly you could see, you know, your business is going to dry up during that time. So any help financially that you can get to keep your head above water is absolutely key. And I think if you're if you're a sole trader or you're literally a one-man band kind of operation, you've also got to look at your own personal finances as well. You know, where can you tighten your belt? Where is that, you know, discretionary spend that you don't need to do, and just to really survive this period. And I think, the key is to act as fast as you can to get the support available, because clearly, you know, every single industry is having challenges. And whilst the government is putting initiatives in place, which is helpful, there is a processing, there is a time frame that's going to take to run through. So the sooner you can take action and do your part in applying for that now, the better, because it may take a while before you actually see the cash.
Yeah, as Will said, there are a lot of companies that want to get into more debt because it's already a bad scene anyway. But it's a difficult one for them because they have to in order to survive. But what's the long-term impact of that?
Yeah, I think Will's advice is sound though, in that you want to have liquidity in terms of having available loans, but be very, very careful when you're making any spend at all. Really question every single line of your accounts to see where you absolutely should be spending and where you need to tighten your belt as aggressively as possible.
So go back to Chris. We've talked about regulations and so on. There's a number of companies out there that have been operating trust accounts. I know you've been very active in developing a trust account model for a number of clients. Is that the future? Do you think? Even for the big airlines, governments will think this could happen again. So the customer money has to be kept in trust. You simply can't use it, and if you keep it in trust, you can survive a calamity like this.
Well, trust accounts have been around a long time. It's always amazed me the industry's general view towards trust accounts, including regulators and trade associations. Even though CA do have CA-approved trust accounts, they went through a period of time where they seemed to be reluctant to see those as a means of protecting consumers. Their mood has changed dramatically on that in recent months and years. The astonishing thing about ABTA is that they've never accepted trust as a means of protecting non-licensable business, probably more to do with competing associations who do operate trust accounts as opposed to their effectiveness. I mean, it is a cash flow drain, obviously, on any business to operate a trust account, but there are some very successful businesses out there that voluntarily use trust accounts. They've been trumpeting it loudly from the rooftops on their websites in recent days, particularly around the whole refund process. If your money's held in a trust account and is outside the liquidity of your business, then it's not going to affect you too bad to make refunds. So I can't help feeling trust accounts are going to become more into focus. It doesn't meet the needs of a lot of travel businesses, particularly where suppliers have to be paid in advance or where you own the assets that make up the holidays. Those assets need to be operated, run, etc., and the funds can't be held in a trust account if you're in that position. But I have to think that they will become more important going forward, maybe not in the short term, but certainly in the medium term. I think regulators are going to view those as desirable.
Do you agree with that, Will? Do you think, I mean, I don't know if you've ever worked for a company that's operated a trust account, but...
I agree with the sentiment. I think the problem the industry will have when they're trying to rebound is that cash flow from deposits, etc., when travel is relaxed again, is what's going to get them going again and put cash back into the business to pay the employees. And if it has to go straight into a trust fund, it's going to make it even more difficult for these businesses to get back off the ground again.
Yeah,
that's why I think it's not a short-term measure. When I made agree with Will, it's a medium-term measure. Businesses have got to get back on their feet again before you can start operating a trust model. But there are very successful businesses that have done it from way back, and I think it's something that the powers that be will look at.
Yeah. So clearly, there's lots of doom and gloom about, and we've reflected that, but that's probably reality. Let's just look a little bit, maybe in the longer term, try and end this on a relatively positive note, if we can, about where things may go. What's your sort of best case scenario, Chris, for what might happen, in the next 6 to 12 months? Well, get out of this.
The shorter the period lasts, the better for the travel industry as a whole, but there are going to be winners. If you come out of this leaner, meaner and keener, you're going to have a marketplace that there are going to be less competitors for very sad reasons, but you can fully make use of that situation. All the benchmarking surveys say that we want to travel more, we want to have more holidays. Not on high on the agenda at this particular moment in time, but once this blows over, I still think there is a tremendously positive outlook for travel businesses going into 2021 and beyond. So my long-term optimism remains, albeit short-term pessimism.
Do you, Chris, there's a body of opinion growing, I guess, that, you know, the lockdown, the reaction is potentially more damaging than the actual virus itself. And as we move into further weeks of lockdown and the economic impact is really being felt, the pressure might be on to find a way to start commerce and business going again. Are you in that camp, or do you think we're doing what we need to do at the minute?
Well, I wouldn't have, you know, many of the government heads, they couldn't make any other decisions. Boris has had to make the decisions he's made because lives are at stake. It's as simple as that. But I found myself, and this is the only time I've ever agreed with President Trump, I think that the economic fallout from this could be as damaging as the social and health fallout has been short term. And so that's something that makes me nervous for the future, unfortunately.
So just turn to Will, your view on the kind of longer term prospects here with a slightly rosier view, maybe?
I think people will travel again. I think there might be less initially, and there's going to be customers concerned about this long term. But you know, it will bounce back and people will travel. I think Chris is right. I think there's going to be less companies because not all of these companies are going to survive. So for those who do and have cash in the bank when travel starts again and have the resources to gear back up again, I think they're going to do fairly well out of it. But the tragedy of this, of course, the big tragedy is that people are dying and people are very ill. But the hidden tragedy is the amount of people are losing their livelihoods and their jobs. And it's really, really worrying time for people, and it's going to last for months.
Is there a particular type of company that's most at risk? I'm thinking like tour operators versus travel agents versus airlines. You know, is it just across the board?
Nobody's traveling. You know, and that includes educational travel businesses, sports travel businesses, anything that involves you going anywhere, either overseas or to a venue. You will literally have no income. And these businesses, remember, are used to at this time, as Jeanette pointed out, having the final balances for summer coming in and all the events that would happen in the summer and the school trips in the summer, etc., as well as revenue in advance for future seasons. No revenue at all. It's a huge, huge problem. That's why I can't emphasize enough. You have to get your overheads as close to zero as you possibly can. Otherwise, at the back end of this, you're going to be not one of the businesses that's bouncing back.
Jeanette, there are a few people making some fairly positive noises. I heard Jet2 talking about getting ready a bounce back campaign. I saw Royal Caribbean saying Q3 and Q4 could be very exciting this year. There's others saying that's very, very optimistic, and maybe there needs to be a dose of realism. Where do you stand between those two?
I think the short term is the dose of realism, and what you need to do, take the tough actions, and more than ever, people need to dig deep. You know, you need strong leadership at times like this to make those tough calls. So I think the short term is all about protecting the downside and just making sure that you are one of those left standing when we come through the other side. So I think that is the clear short term focus. But I think having said that, you know, at times like this, sometimes you get more creative with your thinking, you know, and because you have to think outside of the box a little bit more, and people are working in a different environment. You know, I think we will see possibly some, you know, whilst there'll be some failures and there'll be consolidation for sure, you will then start to see maybe more entrepreneurial businesses sprouting up as well, you know. So I think it will be a mixed bag, to be honest. But, you know, you have to, it's quite hard to plan. I think that's the thing, you know. So for businesses which are looking to go on sale or promote to, you know, 2021, that's quite difficult to do that, I think, at the moment in this short period that we're in now. But, you know, long term, people will travel. The industry is resilient. I think the shape of it will just look quite different over the next couple of years, really. So, but that doesn't mean to say that there won't be opportunities. I think those businesses that treat their customers well, that manage to retain talent in their business, or bring talent in quickly when they can afford to do so again, I think will be the winners. So yeah, you just have to make the tough calls, do the right thing, but be as creative as possible around any opportunities that you can see and jump on, really, as you can.
Okay,
I think
look, yes. Sorry, Will, go on.
And I think they're doing exactly the right thing. You know, if I was sat in one of those businesses being optimistic and telling my customers that we're going to be back and we're going to be back stronger than ever and we're going to have a great season next season, I'd be wanting to make those noises, and I'd want to be planning for every eventuality when it goes back on sale, so I'm ready. So I think any business leader has to be optimistic about the future whilst making the tough calls.
Yeah. I suppose what everything we're trying to hope for here is that some sort of, you know, there's some health breakthrough with a vaccine, or obviously with the testing, and then maybe that can start opening things up. So a lot of it is out of our hands, isn't it? So we don't know when it's going to happen, or if it will happen in the short term. We're near the end of time here, so we'll have a quick last word from Chris, maybe just to finish off. You know, for the guys watching this and wanting to know what they really need to do now, what's your sort of best piece of advice to anybody running a travel company today? What they need to do?
I think Will said it, and Jeanette followed up. Cash is king. Just do whatever you can to hold on to your cash. If you're able to trade through, as I said before, the next 6 months on next to no bookings, I think you will be in the best possible position to come out of what is a difficult situation. It is all about cash management. It is all about minimising costs, getting your cost base down, using every available opportunity that the government has given to you. We haven't discussed things like tax deferrals. Use all of those things. Just hold on to your cash just to be here. I think the regulators will take a pragmatic and an empathetic view when it comes to the renewals on the 28th of April. I think we'll see that coming through. I don't think they've got any other option. So just keep going, be around, and the marketplace will become easier in time.
Okay, look, guys, we'll
yeah, I think I agree with all of that. Today is about surviving, so you can rebound. And I'd just like to say, everybody, good luck and stay well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a good thought to finish on. Look, thank you very much, guys, for your time. I know, you know, you're probably, it's a weird, isn't it? You're at home, you don't think you're going to be busy, but actually it's been mad the last few weeks for everybody. Spend most of our time on Zoom, I think. So thank you for your time, and best of luck. Keep well, you guys, and you know, we hope for the best. We obviously hope for the best for the industry as a whole, because it's a fantastic sector, and it's clearly in a lot of trouble. But you know, there's hope at the end of the tunnel. So thanks very much for your time today, guys. Thank you very much.